What if the world you see isn't real? What if you're living in a simulation? These questions might sound like the plot of a science fiction movie, yet leaked documents suggest that our reality is far more complex than we've ever imagined. These aren't just theories, they're potential blueprints for understanding the world around us. These documents hint at the idea that the reality we perceive is a complex program, controlled by forces beyond our everyday awareness, and what you are about to discover may change the way you see everything. This isn't just some abstract concept. Understanding the true nature of our reality is the key to unlocking your full potential and reshaping your experience. If you had the chance to discover the hidden mechanisms of the world and to take back your power, wouldn't you want to know how? This knowledge is not just relevant to you as an individual, but also to all of humanity, impacting our history, our understanding of reality, and our future potential. What if we are all in this together, unknowingly participating in a system that we don't understand? The programmers of this reality might not be who you think they are, they may even be you. These ideas will challenge everything you thought you knew, requiring a shift in perspective and mindset. The leaked documents are not just a set of instructions, but a language of understanding that can help us interpret the nature of this simulation, allowing us to move beyond its limitations and into greater understanding. We will be exploring the concepts of free will, illusion, and self-programming, ideas that will allow you to start seeing through the illusion and reclaim your power. If reality is a simulation, that means it has a code, and if there is a code, it can be decoded. But first, we need to understand the framework. Philosophers and mystics have questioned the nature of reality for centuries. It isn't a new question. From the allegory of Plato's cave to ancient spiritual traditions, the idea that our world is not what it seems has always been present. Now we have a chance to re-examine these ideas with a new perspective. If our reality is a program, that means it has a code, and that code can potentially be interpreted and even rewritten. The leaked documents might just be a tool that allows us to understand that code and potentially start to rewrite it. But we will start this journey with a new understanding of the key principles. We'll explore techniques such as self-inquiry and mindfulness that help you see beyond the limitations of this constructed world, giving you the tools you need to start shifting your perception and therefore shifting the program itself. The first step is to question everything you think you know. Take a moment and ask, is what I am seeing real? If this is a simulation, who is creating it? And what does that mean for your own identity? What does this mean for the experiences you are having? These questions are not just for consideration, but the beginning of the journey. These documents contain not only shocking information about the nature of our reality, but also hidden keys that allow you to start to understand your own. What if the power to rewrite the code is within you? What if your thoughts and intentions are actually the programming language? We will explore all of these ideas, and by the end of this video, you will have a new understanding of how this simulation works and how you can start to take control. Let's begin. Let's take a closer look at the leaked documents. Initially, these documents may have appeared as a series of complex codes and technical instructions. But what if these are not literal instructions, but a framework for understanding the very nature of our reality? What if they are a symbolic language, not to be deciphered in a literal sense, but interpreted as a guide to understand the deeper structures of the simulation? Let's take, for example, one of the documents that seems to describe a series of seemingly random numbers. On the surface, it might appear to be an encryption key or some form of technical data. But what if this sequence is actually a reflection of a deeper code, mirrored in ancient texts? Many ancient spiritual texts speak of the same concepts, the idea of as above, so below, suggesting that the patterns of the microcosm reflect the patterns of the macrocosm. This code might be a symbolic language representing the interconnectedness of all things, a key to understanding the underlying unity of consciousness. The numbers themselves might not be important, but the idea of seeing the patterns as a form of language that allows us to understand our deeper nature and the reality around us. The documents are not just a set of instructions, but a kind of Rosetta Stone to understand the universe if we know how to interpret them. The initial presentation of these leaked documents as purely technical was a method to engage with your current understanding of the world, but now we can go beyond that to see the deeper truths they are reflecting. What if these documents are actually a map to inner self-reflection and not external manipulation? The simulation hypothesis isn't a radical idea that exists in isolation. It actually aligns with concepts from quantum physics, ancient spiritual traditions, and philosophical thought experiments. The concept of reality as a malleable construct has been explored by many ancient cultures and modern science. For instance, consider the observer effect in quantum physics. This effect demonstrates that the very act of observing a quantum system can change its behavior, suggesting that our consciousness is not separate from the reality we perceive, and that our attention alone can alter the outcomes. This directly mirrors the idea that the simulation itself is being shaped by our individual and collective consciousness. It seems like the simulation itself is not a fixed, unchanging structure, but is actually a fluid environment that is in constant interaction with the observer. These aren't just abstract concepts. They are backed by scientific findings that suggest reality is far more pliable than we have been led to believe. The ancient spiritual traditions have always spoken of the world as being an illusion, a projection of consciousness. What if the simulation is the modern understanding of that very same concept? This idea is not simply out there. It also holds a potential understanding of how we interact with our own experience and the agency we have within it. The more we dig into the nature of this simulation, the more we discover it isn't separate from our own experiences and understanding. It is actually a mirror to it. So, if this reality is a simulation, what are the rules? We tend to think that the laws of physics and the limitations of our physical bodies are fixed and unchangeable. But what if these rules are not external constraints, but internal beliefs projected outwards, shaping our experience? What if the rules of the simulation are actually the limitations we place on ourselves? For example, take the limiting belief that you are not good enough. This belief shapes your experience by restricting your actions and expectations, becoming a fixed law within your personal experience of the simulation. These limiting beliefs are the rules that bind us. These rules aren't inherent to the simulation itself, but they are deeply ingrained in our subconscious, and therefore they appear to be fixed and unchangeable. But what if you had the power to change these beliefs? What if, by changing your perception, you were able to change the rules themselves? The idea here is that you are not bound by the rules, but instead are creating them by your own understanding. This isn't a limitation, but is actually an opportunity to discover our own unique influence within the simulation. What if the rules are not set in stone, but a malleable framework that can be shaped by our perception? If this is true, then true change can only begin internally. We are accustomed to thinking of our reality as a fixed set of rules, but what if these rules are simply a manifestation of the beliefs we hold? If reality is a simulation, it implies a certain level of malleability, and that the code isn't set in stone, but can be bent or even broken. What if our internal perceptions are the very things that dictate what we experience? Take the idea of the placebo effect. In medical trials, participants who believe they are receiving a treatment often show improvement, even when given a fake pill. This is a scientifically proven example of how our beliefs and expectations can alter our physical reality. This seemingly small effect, if considered within the concept of a simulation, reveals the power of belief and intention to shape our experiences. It is clear that the rules are not set in stone, but instead they seem to be fluid, affected by our inner state. The placebo effect gives us a real-world glimpse of this process and helps us see that the rules of the simulation are not as fixed as they appear. This introduces the concept of choice, that seemingly fixed rules are actually able to be bent or broken by altering internal perceptions and beliefs. This is where the real power lies, the ability to shape our own experience within the simulation. If you have the power to do this in a small way, imagine the potential for your own conscious influence. Now, let's shift our focus from external programmers to the internal landscape. Instead of looking for some unseen hand manipulating our reality, what if the true programmers are our own internal beliefs, patterns, and subconscious programming? What if the core of our simulation experience is actually our own internal programming system? This isn't about shifting responsibility, but reclaiming it, recognizing that we are not victims of an external force, but rather co-creators of our own experience. If we consider that our internal world is the main influencer, we start to discover that we are not at the whim of external programming, we are the programmers of our own individual simulation. It is time to shift our focus inward, exploring how our internal world is directly impacting our experience of the world. This is not about blaming the self, but empowering it. By understanding the influence our internal world has on the external, we can start to take conscious control of the system and start to rewrite our own personal program. By becoming aware of our internal programming, we become aware of our own creative power and its effect on the external world. If our beliefs are the code that programs our reality, then what are the implications? This concept isn't just some abstract idea, it's a fundamental principle of how the simulation operates. Your beliefs and intentions are not simply abstract thoughts, but are active programs that shape your experience. Think about it for a moment. If you believe that the world is a dangerous and hostile place, you'll likely experience situations that mirror that belief. Conversely, if you believe in abundance and opportunity, your experiences will reflect those beliefs. This is not just wishful thinking, but the direct effect of your internal programming creating your reality. Every thought and intention is a line of code, each adding to the overall experience within the simulation. If we start to see our internal world as this programming language, we can begin to consciously shape it. If this is true, it's time to start asking yourself what kind of program you are currently running and how you might choose to rewrite it. How is your current programming shaping your experience? This is not about controlling the world around you, but consciously choosing the lens through which you perceive it. What about those subconscious patterns that operate in the background? These patterns act as the autopilot system of our simulation, running programs that we aren't even aware of. These are the habits, the repeated thoughts, and the emotional reactions that keep us in a continuous loop. These are the hidden parts of the code that are creating our reality from the shadows. These deeply ingrained patterns, often formed from past experiences, are the underlying programs that are constantly running in the background, shaping our actions, emotions, and perceptions. For example, if you grew up with a sense of scarcity, that program might continue to run in the background, attracting experiences that mirror those early patterns. You might find that, even when your conscious mind desires abundance, your subconscious programming keeps you in a state of lack. The first step to change these patterns is to see them and observe them without judgment in order to become aware of their influence. What if you had the ability to observe yourself as a programmer, watching the code in real time? That is where the potential for change lies, not in fighting the patterns, but in understanding them. By bringing these patterns into the light of conscious awareness, you begin to gain the ability to change the programs. If we shift our perspective once again, what if this simulation isn't a prison, but a complex environment designed for our personal growth and learning? What if the simulation is not a trap, but a mechanism for our own evolution? If we recontextualize the simulation in this way, we can see how the challenges and obstacles we face are opportunities to learn and evolve. By seeing it in this new light, we move out of the idea of imprisonment and into the idea of choice and growth. These challenges act as catalysts for self-discovery and the refinement of our inner code. If the simulation was a perfect, unchanging, and predictable experience, there would be no possibility for growth. But instead, it is a continuous interplay between our programming and the experiences we attract. Therefore, the very nature of the simulation is to provide an opportunity for evolution through experience. The idea of a prison is only a limitation of perception. What if instead, it is an active training ground for becoming more conscious and more capable programmers? The goal here is to see the power we have to consciously change our program, so that we are not simply living an autopilot version of the simulation, but a constantly evolving experience that is directly tied to our internal state of consciousness. Now that we have begun to decode some of the mechanisms of the simulation, it's time to introduce the first actionable step: self-inquiry. This process isn't about finding some external truth, but about understanding your own internal programming. It's about asking yourself the questions: why do I believe what I believe? Where did this pattern of thought come from? Or what purpose does this limitation serve? These questions might seem simple, but they are actually a form of debugging your inner code. They bring awareness to your internal world and how it is shaping your reality. By questioning the assumptions and beliefs you hold, you are essentially starting to rewrite the code itself. Just like in software development, if you find a glitch, you must examine the lines of code that created it so that you can alter it. By observing the patterns of thought and emotion without engaging with them, you gain the power to change them. This first step requires simply looking within and seeing the inner workings of the simulation you are running and asking, how did this become my truth? It is in the asking that the real understanding comes. Mindfulness and meditation become crucial tools to observe our internal programs. These practices allow us to step back from our thoughts and emotions, observing them without judgment or engagement. It is in this quiet space of observation that we begin to see the mechanisms that are running in the background. Mindfulness allows us to become aware of our reactions and impulses, and this awareness gives us the freedom to choose our responses instead of reacting. This is not about clearing your mind, but instead observing your mind and all of the patterns that are happening within it. By using this tool, we create a new understanding of our internal programming and how it is shaping our reality. Imagine you are debugging a computer program. You need to be able to see the code in order to rewrite it. Mindfulness is that space, the place where you can observe the inner workings of your programming without becoming entangled in the stories and emotions. It is from this new vantage point that you begin to see the inner workings of the simulation and how to change the programming. Once you understand how your beliefs and patterns are affecting the simulation, you can then use intention setting as a way to consciously program your experience. If your thoughts are a form of code, then intention is the command line. Your clear, focused intention becomes the instruction that guides your thoughts, feelings, and actions, directly influencing the simulation. Instead of being driven by subconscious patterns and automatic reactions, you are consciously choosing the direction of your energy. This is not just about wishing for things, but about directing your attention and energy with a specific purpose. When you set a clear intention, you are setting the parameters for how you want the simulation to unfold. You are no longer just a passive observer, but an active co-creator. It is from this place of conscious programming that you begin to fully embody your role as the architect of your own experience. If intention is the key, then what are you consciously creating in the moment? As you start to implement these practices, something interesting will begin to occur. You will begin to notice the glitches more often and more consciously. These glitches are not random errors, but are actually signs of your awakening within the simulation. As you shift your perception and your understanding of the simulation, you will begin to see the cracks in the program. This might manifest as moments of déjà vu, synchronicities, or shifts in your perception of time and space. These aren't just unusual occurrences, but rather a sign that you are starting to perceive the underlying structure of reality. The more you engage in self-inquiry, mindfulness, and intention setting, the more frequent these glitches will become. They are a feedback mechanism, a confirmation that you are actively changing the code of the simulation. Pay attention to them and let them be an encouragement that you are no longer simply living within the simulation, but are becoming aware of the program itself. They are a sign that you are rewriting the code. Now it's time to challenge our very definition of reality itself. What if reality isn't a fixed, objective thing, but instead a fluid, subjective experience shaped by our perception and consciousness? If the world we see is a simulation, what does that say about our understanding of what is real? The simulation isn't an external construct that exists separately from us, but is a reflection of our collective and individual consciousness. It is not a thing that exists out there, but is actually a mirror of our own inner workings, and therefore is able to be changed and influenced. By understanding this, we start to see that we are not separate from the simulation, but are instead integral parts of it. This allows us to step out of the idea of being subjected to the program and move into the idea that we are playing an active role in creating it. The simulation is not something we observe, but something we actively participate in, and the shift in awareness will start to show us the possibilities that exist beyond a fixed, externalized concept of reality. If reality is perception, then what is consciousness? If consciousness shapes our reality, then it is not limited to the confines of the brain, but exists as a fundamental aspect of reality itself. Consciousness is the observer and the programmer of the simulation, and therefore it is not separate from the program, but instead is an essential part of its very fabric. It is not simply a passive receiver of information, but is an active participant in creating the simulation itself. The more we understand the nature of consciousness, the more we understand the role that we have to play in this experience. The simulation becomes a canvas for our consciousness to explore itself, offering endless possibilities for growth and self-discovery. This understanding of consciousness is important because if we are not simply living in the simulation, but are a part of it, then we can actively influence the very nature of reality itself. By coming to this awareness, we take our role as co-creators of our experience. Let's take one final look at those initial leaked documents. We now see that they were not literal instructions, but a map to self-awareness and conscious engagement with our experience of the simulation. The codes were never external, but were a representation of the journey we are on, a guide to understanding the deeper levels of ourselves and the nature of the simulation. These codes can be reframed as a pathway to personal transformation, offering us the keys to unlock a new way of relating to the material world. They highlight the possibilities that exist beyond the limitations we impose on ourselves. If you now see that these documents are more of a guide than a set of instructions, what does that mean for the codes you have within you? What if those codes are the potential that you have to create your own reality? We have now started to decode the program, but there is much more to know about the why behind the simulation and how we can more consciously interact with it. The journey is far from over, and you are now ready to take the next step. So join me in the next part of this journey, where we will explore the deeper purposes of this simulation and how we can consciously shape our own experience of it. So let's return once more to the leaked CIA documents. We initially presented them as a set of complex codes, but now we understand that they were actually a symbolic language, a guide to interpret our experience and to start to understand the program from a new perspective. They weren't meant to be decoded literally, but were instead an allegorical representation of ancient wisdom, spiritual insights, and quantum principles. The codes themselves are not external secrets, but internal processes and practices that lead to a greater understanding of the nature of reality. What seemed like a series of random numbers or technical instructions was always a map of self-discovery, each symbol a pointer towards a deeper understanding of your own consciousness and the nature of the simulation. This understanding was not hidden, but was simply framed in a way that required a new lens to be interpreted. By now seeing that the codes are not external but internal, you begin to see the power you have within the simulation. The documents were always a mirror to the inner landscape, if you only knew how to look. Now let's bring together all the patterns we've explored. The glitches, the codes, and the actionable steps. These aren't isolated ideas, but interconnected parts of a larger framework. The glitches aren't random errors, but indicators of increased awareness, a sign that your perception is shifting. The codes are the language through which you can begin to consciously shape your reality, a method of interacting with the simulation from a position of power. The actionable steps are the tools to directly engage with these ideas, practices to enhance your awareness and allow you to actively rewrite the code. Each one is a vital component of the others, where an increase in mindfulness and conscious intention directly leads to a greater awareness of glitches, acting as feedback that shows your influence over your perceived reality and reinforces the effectiveness of the codes. This is not just a set of random ideas, but a complete system that is designed to be engaged with and ultimately lead you to a deeper understanding of your own place within the simulation. At the heart of this understanding is the concept that the simulation isn't an external construct, but a reflection of your internal world. The programmers aren't some shadowy group, but the subconscious beliefs, patterns, and limitations that you carry within you. This shifts the focus from victim to active participant. It's not about blaming yourself, but about taking responsibility for your own experience and recognizing the power you have to shape it. The limitations are not external, but are in fact your own internal limitations reflected outwards, creating the experience that you perceive. By understanding these patterns, you can begin to consciously shape your experience of the simulation. It is not some force that is imposing itself upon you, but rather a system that is directly reflecting your own consciousness. This realization transforms your role in this experience, giving you the agency to create the reality you desire, and not simply living in an unchosen program. This understanding reveals the true power of choice within the simulation. You are not bound by perceived limitations. You have the ability to rewrite the code and to choose your own experience. Every thought, every action, and every belief has an effect on the simulation's code, and it is through your conscious choices that you are able to shape your reality. The rules are not fixed, but are instead malleable based on your beliefs and your intentions, giving you the ability to bend them or even break them entirely. This is not an idea that is separate from your life, but rather is directly affecting everything in every moment. This understanding empowers you with the knowledge that you are always choosing, even when that choice is unconscious. This gives you the ability to step into a more active role and rewrite your experience based on conscious intention. Let's expand this understanding beyond your individual experience to see how it impacts humanity as a whole. The simulation is a collective experience, and the understanding you are cultivating impacts the whole due to the interconnectedness of consciousness within this system. The awakening of even one person has a ripple effect, creating a positive feedback loop that spreads throughout the simulation. This is not just a personal journey, but a collective one, where each individual has the ability to create a positive future for all through their own individual growth. The understanding that we are all interconnected through the system means that your personal growth does not occur in isolation, but creates a positive influence for others to discover the same for themselves. This understanding moves the narrative from the individual to the collective, so that you can see that your personal actions are not isolated, but part of a much larger system. The glitches we talked about earlier are not just random occurrences. They are indicators of your awakening, a sign that you are becoming more conscious of the underlying structure of reality. The more you engage with the tools and practices you have been given, the more sensitive you become to the feedback that the simulation is providing you. These glitches are not just random errors in the system, but are actually clues to your personal path of growth, showing you what you need to see and understand. As you become more aware of these moments, you are also becoming more aware of your own agency and your ability to shape the very fabric of this reality. These moments are not to be dismissed, but but instead they are an encouragement to see the change in your awareness as you begin to see reality through a new lens. The implications of understanding the simulation are vast. They permeate every aspect of your life. How you choose to relate to your job, your relationships, and your health are all influenced by how you understand the simulation and what role you choose to play in it. This is not just a concept to be thought about, but an active experience to be lived, with every choice offering you a moment to shape your reality. By understanding how your beliefs and patterns are shaping your life, you can consciously choose to rewrite your programming and create more positive and fulfilling experiences. This shifts the perspective from being a passive observer to being an active creator, taking responsibility for all elements of your life. The understanding of the simulation is not simply a theory to be considered, but a framework through which your entire life can be transformed. Finally, understanding the simulation moves you from a passive observer to an active creator of your reality. It is a journey of reclaiming your personal agency and stepping into your full power. Responsibility is not a burden, but the ability to consciously choose, offering you the ability to not only interact with the simulation, but to shape it in accordance with your highest intentions. It's the power to decide who you want to be and what kind of experiences you want to have. This is not about fighting the system, but instead becoming aware of how you can work with it to create the experiences that you desire. The key is understanding that your choices matter, and that you are not simply a passenger in your own life, but the active driver of the experience. So, what is the purpose behind this simulation? It is not a prison, but a complex environment designed for your personal growth, a playground for your consciousness to explore itself and the possibilities that lie within it. The challenges that you face are not obstacles, but opportunities to learn, evolve, and to refine your inner code. The idea of it being a prison is simply a limitation of perception. What if it is, instead, an active training ground for becoming more conscious and more capable? This shifts your understanding from the idea of entrapment to the idea of empowerment, seeing that you are not limited by the system, but instead, you can use it as a tool for personal evolution. The simulation is not something to escape from, but a system to be understood and used for your own benefit and growth. It is a place of unlimited potential that is designed for you to explore. Let's complete the cycle of actionable steps with one final practice. Take a moment to set a clear intention for the reality you wish to create. Imagine it vividly, feel the emotions associated with it, and believe it to be possible. Use all the tools you have gained from this video. Be mindful, use intention, see the patterns, and observe the glitches. This is not just a wish, but a conscious act of programming your experience. By doing this, you are directly engaging with the simulation and actively choosing the direction of your journey. This is a moment to synthesize all that you have learned and to start to actively create a new reality from this place of empowered understanding. This is not the end, but the beginning of a new journey into conscious creation. Throughout this video, we have explored many ideas, and now is the time to address some of the initial questions we asked in the beginning. What is the nature of reality? It's a fluid, subjective experience shaped by your consciousness, a simulation that reflects your inner world and is constantly changing with your understanding of it. Who are the programmers? They are not some external force, but the beliefs, patterns, and limitations that you hold within yourself. By coming to these answers, we complete a cycle of understanding and give a final sense of resolution that is based on the information provided. This is not meant to be the end of the journey, but simply a stepping stone into greater understanding. With these questions answered, it frees you to explore deeper ideas and new possibilities. The discovery of the simulation is not a threat, but a positive opportunity, a chance to step into your personal power. By releasing the tension from the initial mystery, you can now move from a feeling of confusion to one of empowerment and excitement. This is not the end, but a new beginning, the end of a certain kind of unconscious suffering, and the dawn of a new way of experiencing reality. With this new understanding, you are now equipped to navigate this experience with more clarity and intention. You have the power to choose and the tools to engage with that choice. This is not a reason to be fearful, but is a call to action, a movement towards conscious living and the creation of a more fulfilling experience. This is not the end of your journey, it's a new beginning. There are always more questions to ask, deeper levels of reality to explore, and more profound understandings of consciousness to uncover. This path will continually present new territory, and it is through the act of questioning that the journey continues to evolve. This understanding is not a stopping point, but an open invitation to explore further and discover new possibilities. The journey is ongoing, and every step you take will lead you to more knowledge and greater personal power. There are always more advanced techniques to discover, deeper levels of the code to be understood, and more refined ways to interact with the simulation. The journey is infinite, and as you continue to grow and evolve, you will uncover new methods of understanding that will expand your awareness even further. This process does not have a final destination, it is a constant evolution, and you are now equipped to explore all the potential that it holds. This is just the beginning, and your journey has no limitations, except the ones you place on yourself. Share your experiences with others, share the glitches you've noticed, and engage in conversations that expand your understanding. This isn't a journey to be taken alone. It's through dialogue and shared experiences that we can collectively raise the level of consciousness. There are others out there who are experiencing these same realizations, and by sharing your experiences, you will empower them to step into their own unique potential. This is a communal effort that requires active participation and an open heart. Your experiences are valuable, and by sharing them, you are positively impacting the whole. Now that you know this, it is up to you to act on it. Engage with the practices, choose consciously, and step into your personal power. This is your moment to create a reality that is aligned with your highest potential. Step into that power and consciously create the experiences that you desire. With this new understanding, the choice is yours. What will you create? The simulation awaits your conscious response.